Hi, I'm Erin Gruwell, an English teacher. 150 students put their stories together in a book, The Freedom Writer's Diary, and we are so honored that this book led to the release of this incredible film that will take each and every one of you through a journey of what it means to find your voice, to have a second chance, and to believe in yourself. I hope you find yourself within the pages of a book or on the big screen, but most importantly, after you read and after you watch, I hope you find the courage to pick up a pen, to pick up a blank piece of paper, and to tell your own story. And may you write what needs to be written. And I hope that you too can tell the world what it needs to be told. Because I'm an English teacher, I was always looking for metaphors and analogies to give what we were doing substance. And so the name Freedom Writers was obviously our first metaphor, and the idea of using the pen to write, to liberate, and to give ourselves a voice. In the Freedom Writer mantra, our basis is really looking at the past so we're not doomed to repeat it, and really understanding that when diverse worlds come together, that beauty is inevitable. And so the fabric of our story is bringing all of these different cultures and religions and beliefs and races together and learning from one another. And I think that's why our story was so strong, is that my students initially were students, but they became teachers. And I initially was a teacher, and I became a student. And I think that's the best kind of learning, is when you can learn from the past and learn from the present to make a better future. I am an idealist, and I embrace that, because I feel that we have been so fortunate, myself and the Freedom Writers, to put these ideas in the universe and hope they come to fruition. And one of my students, who's a Freedom Writer, made a comment one time. He said, "If Miss G says we're going to the moon, somebody better call NASA." And it's been this exciting journey of just throwing these ideas out that seem so impractical, taking my students to Auschwitz, taking my students to Sarajevo, sending a letter off like a message in a bottle to Zlata Filipovich, and inviting her to come to California. And all of those very idealistic ideas came to fruition. And so I think till my dying day, I'll continue to be impractical and idealistic. I was always trying to make education relevant and substantive, and build a bridge to what my students knew, whether it was pop culture, and what I wanted to teach them. And so for me, it was constantly bringing the world into our classroom and taking my students out into the world. I was blessed. I was scrambling to try to find a way to have my students really appreciate literature. And this was a group of students who did not read and did not write. So I was trying to find books written by, for, and about teenagers who lived in wars, and rather than reaching for weapons and fighting back, they reached for words. And so initially, the core text was going to be the Diary of Anne Frank. And I was so amazed one day. I picked up Newsweek, and on the cover of Newsweek was Zlata Filipovich.
During the war in Bosnia, which was lasting from 92 to 95, I was keeping a diary. Now the thing is that an awful lot of girls keep diaries at any time of their life. But the interesting thing about my diary was that it was a diary that was being written during this wartime.
Inside Newsweek were all these incredible excerpts from her diary, and juxtaposing what happened in Bosnia-Herzegovina and what was happening in America, and what happened during World War II with the Holocaust. Following that, there was a Scholastic magazine series in America that profiled Zlata Filipovich. I got a hold of that magazine, and once again, they had excerpts. And so I waited for the book to come out, got the book, and thought this has to be the next book that follows in the footsteps of the Diary of Anne Frank. And the irony of teaching about Zlata Filipovich was, symbolically, Anne Frank was 15 years old when she was captured and went off to Bergen-Belsen. My students at the time were 15, and Zlata Filipovich was 15.
Well, I moved to Ireland in 1995, and it was kind of several months after that. I was living in Bosnia, and I lived in Paris for a while, and then I moved to Ireland. And several months into kind of adjusting to life over there, I get this big envelope full of colorful letters written by over 100 young people, exactly the same age as me, and an attached letter from their teacher. And this had happened before, and I've had certain letters from people who read my diary and responded to it some way, and it's always incredibly moving to hear this. But then these guys really kind of were extremely powerful in just the sheer volume of them and the way in which they responded to what they read about me.
So after picking up her book, the idea was, how can we take her story and use her story as a way to share our story? And rather than doing a book report, rather than taking a test, let's write her letters. We'll bind them together like a book, send them across the sea like a message in a bottle, and invite her to come and visit us. And as one of my students said, it was like kids wishing for candy. How can we get this international icon to read our letters and then agree to come to America and tell her story? And she did. And in doing so, it was even more symbolic, because she said, I want to bring my mother, who is a Croat. I want to bring my father, who is a Muslim, and I want to bring my best friend, who is Serbian. And so we got 4 people to visit our culture and to really demystify what was happening in this war, what happened in Croatia, what was happening in Bosnia, and throughout the former Yugoslavia.
I think we can always find that we can divide people along certain lines. All of us are the same and different in different ways. So you could go along religious lines, you could go along ethnic group lines, you could go along race lines, you can go along socioeconomic lines. You can always divide people if you want to. Or you can also make them realize that they're an awful lot similar and the same if you want to. So I lived in a country which was extremely mixed, mixed in terms of religions and ethnic groups. It had a kind of a colorful history, and each element of history left its own layer on it, which made it so interesting and so beautiful. And I was raised very much in a family in which none of this ever mattered. It was never explained to me. And probably the people that my parents would have associated with, it was exactly the same. It didn't matter to them, neither. So we all liked each other because we were good people, and maybe the only distinction that you can make is between good people and bad people. That's pretty much it. So I was raised surrounded by all this diversity. That diversity was never pointed out to me in any way, except that some people celebrate this holiday and other people celebrate that holiday, and this is what you do when it's this holiday, and this is what you say, and this is the kind of present you bring and the kind of food you eat.
And when I reflected how difficult it was, and it was really difficult, I think about what my students had to go through. At the end of the day, I had a roof over my head, food in my refrigerator, I had family members who loved me, I had an education, and I was safe. And I didn't have to go through what my students had to go through every day, some of them being homeless, some of them having family members abuse them, mentally, physically, sexually. I didn't have to look over my shoulder every single day and wonder, do I have a bullseye on the back of my back or on the front of my chest? I didn't bury my friends on a weekly basis. And I had students who stood in assembly lines at funeral parlors or were pallbearers, burying friend after friend. I never spent a night in jail. I never knew what it was like to have a deadbeat dad who didn't show up on a birthday or a Christmas. And so when I brought all that together, I realized, as difficult as it may be for me, it pales in comparison to how difficult it is for my students. And so that was really what gave me the impetus and the courage every day, that if they can get themselves up and make their way to room 203, then so can I.
It was quite sort of remarkable to have these 150 American teenagers from the West Coast, from Long Beach, California, wandering around this city straight after the war, and after all their experiences of going to Amsterdam and the Anne Frank house, and they went to Poland and Auschwitz and then Sarajevo. So it was quite a kind of remarkable group of people, and the teacher, Erin, and the way in which she led them and changed their lives and impacted on their lives through literature, through writing, through getting them to write, was really quite astounding. And eventually they actually got a book out, and they asked me to write a foreword for it, and it was a huge honor as well. And the book did very well, and they became very well known, and had a film out and a documentary coming out. So they're kind of show very, very clearly a power of one teacher, a power of writing, and how you can actually gather people around an idea and change people's lives purely through relating to other people. I mean, one of the most interesting things perhaps is that the freedom writers responded so incredibly well to certain pieces of writing which were coming out of conflicts, and they related to it because it made sense to their own kind of conflicts of their own lives. They were living in a very tough area in a suburb of Los Angeles, and the conflicts they read about from 1940s or early 90s made sense to them, even though they were living in officially a non-conflict zone in one of the most developed countries in the world. So it was interesting how you can actually find these links and how they found links, and their teacher managed to kind of find those links for them and help them and show them different parts of the world, teach them about conflict and resolution and making a personal change, making a more of a community group change, and the power of writing and reading. I think teachers can be some of the most remarkable, inspiring people, and I know that I've had some in my life who I've really felt played a huge role, whether they make things a little bit difficult for you and then you want to prove yourself, whether they open things up for you or point you in directions of things, or they recognize your own particular interests and qualities perhaps even before you've recognized them yourself. So and at the end, how much time do we actually spend in school? An awful lot of our own lives, particularly now there's so much less time that we're spending interacting with our parents, with other family members within communities. So we spend an awful lot of time in schools, and this is really an incredibly fertile ground in which you can actually create things for young people. So teachers are can be hugely inspirational people, and they leave a mark on you for the rest of your life. So if you find a really good one, if you're extremely lucky to find one who actually wants to engage with you beyond just teaching you those basic skills of adding up and learning what different part of your body is called, or names of battles through history, but actually manages to use all that knowledge, all that information to kind of in a more of a holistic manner in which they create more of a person out of you or help you become a greater person yourself. That's, I think, where that kind of personal change can happen, and then you interacting with other people within a social surrounding can actually teach you how to be a better person in life.
This is my love letter to Zlata Filipovich, who not only changed my life, but changed the lives of 150 students. And we are forever feeling your ripple. You inspired my students to put down their fist, pick up a pen, and follow in your footsteps and tell their story. And in doing so, change the lives of millions of kids. And so we are so indebted to you. We are so in awe of you. And we are so appreciative of everything that you taught us about fighting the good fight, standing up for the little guy, and giving a voice to the voiceless. So we love you, we honor you, and we will continue spreading the word of justice for all people at all times, in all places, because of you. So keep fighting the good fight and fighting for the underdog, Zlata, and know that Erin and 150 freedom writers and all that we've touched got our inspiration from you, and you will continue to inspire us and continue to be our dedication and our acknowledgement. So thank you. We miss you and we love you, and we want to bring you to the US as soon as we can. So thank you.